Tonight we bring you text messages you were never supposed to see, suggesting two FBI employees may have tried to use a personal relationship with a federal judge, a FISC judge, to influence the investigation into the Trump presidential campaign. This comes on a day when a career FBI executive could lose his full government pension after being accused of acting on a similar bias against the president. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here with details. Good evening, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Brett. In late July 2016, after the Clinton email case closed and the FBI opened its Russia investigation, text messages indicate FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI lawyer Lisa Page talked about exploiting Strzok's friendship with a federal judge who would later handle the prosecution of former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. Investigators working for House Republicans Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows reviewed the original documents at the Justice Department and took notes because the copies sent to Congress were heavily redacted with key details blacked out. Texting on their work phones, the two FBI lovers suggest setting up a cocktail party with federal Judge Rudolph Contreras, who also sits on the secret FISA surveillance court. On July 25, 2016, Page writes, "Judge Contreras is on the FISC. Did you know that? Just appointed 2 months ago." Strzok, "I did. We talked about it before and after. I need to get together with him." Page continues, "I can't imagine either one of you could talk about anything in detail meaningful enough to warrant recusal." Strzok, "Really? Rudy, I'm in charge of espionage for the FBI. Any espionage FISA warrants comes before him. What should he do, given his friend oversees them?" After texting about an unrelated issue, Strzok writes, "Contreras super thoughtful and rigorous about ethics and conflicts. M suggested a social setting with others would probably be better than a one-on-one meeting. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to invite you to that cocktail party. Of course, you'll have to be there, have to come up with some other work people cover for action." Page, "Why more? 6 is a perfectly fine dinner party." It's not clear from the text messages whether the cocktail party ever happened and the federal judge attended. After National Security Advisor Mike Flynn pled guilty to lying to the FBI in December, less than a week later, Contreras was removed from the case without explanation. Congressional investigators question whether there is a connection to Strzok, who also conducted Flynn's FBI interview. The newly public text messages seem to further undercut the FBI leadership's longstanding claims that the Bureau is above politics.
Has the dismissal of Mr. Comey in any way impeded, interrupted, stopped, or negatively impacted any of the work, any investigation, or any ongoing projects at the Federal Bureau of Investigations?
There has been no effort to impede our investigation to date. Quite simply put, sir, you cannot stop the men and women of the FBI from doing the right thing, protecting the American people, and upholding the Constitution.
A decision from the Attorney General Jeff Sessions on the fate of the former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe you just saw there, and whether he will be fired for cause impacting his pension is expected at any time, Brett.
It's Friday afternoon. We will watch for any releases.
You bet.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
A lot of ground to cover. Welcome to the special edition of Hannity. Washington scandals tonight. Real breaking news, real investigative reporting that the rest of the mainstream media will never do. We have explosive new information first reported by Sarah Carter, since confirmed by Fox News. Newly obtained text messages are showing that Trump-hating FBI agent Peter Strzok, well, he was close friends with U.S. District Court Judge Rudolph Contreras. Now, the messages are also revealing that Strzok and his FBI lover, Lisa Page, they actually wanted to meet Judge Contreras at a cocktail party. Is that collusion? Now, this is the same judge that presided over a hearing where the former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pled guilty to lying to the FBI. Now, Judge Contreras then later mysteriously recused himself from the Flynn case. And also brand new tonight, USA Today is reporting that the Justice Department is considering publicly releasing parts of the FISA surveillance warrant against Carter Page. And breaking right now, Fox News reporting that the phony dossier that author, former British spy Christopher Steele, is being ordered to appear now for a videotaped deposition as part of this ongoing legal battle in London. This is a major development and could finally provide answers to very key questions about Hillary's bought and paid for dossier and if Steele tried to ever even verify it. Now, all that brand new information, plus Fox News is learning that the deadline for the former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe to be fired and lose his pension could now be Saturday. And also tonight, Axios is reporting that disgraced former FBI Director James Comey, well, he plans to come out swinging against his critics in his upcoming book tour. I'll remind him again, you have the right to remain silent. We have a challenge, by the way, and an open invitation to Jim Comey. Come on this show. We'll give you a full hour. I'll give you 3 hours on my nationally syndicated radio show, 575 stations. We'll have more of this in our breaking news opening monologue. All right, tonight a brand new scandal involving anti-Trump FBI lovebirds Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Newly obtained text messages between Strzok and Page are revealing damning new information. Now, Strzok, we find out today, is friends with federal judge Rudolph Contreras, who sits now on the FISC court. Now, the romantically involved Trump haters, Strzok and Page, also messaged about attending a cocktail party with this judge, Judge Contreras. Now, here's what is really disturbing. The judge presided over the hearing where Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pled guilty to lying to the FBI. Now, there's a lot of other important context to explain here. We'll do that in just a minute. But first, let's take a look at these brand new text messages. Let's start. July 25th, 2016. Page writes, Rudy, the judge we're talking about, is on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Did you know that? And Page adds, just, appointed 2 months ago. Strzok replies, I did. And we talked about it before and after. I need to get together with him so Strzok and Judge Contreras know each other. Now, Page later writes, as you read through this, thought of it because you had to Google Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court judges and saw him there. I'm telling you. Strzok follows up with, well, she brought up a good point about being circumspect in talking to him in terms of not placing him in a situation where he'd actually have to recuse himself. And Page then texts, I can't imagine either one of you ever talking about anything in detail meaningful enough to warrant a recusal. And Page says, well, anyway, maybe you didn't mean to, but didn't. And Strzok answers, really, Rudy? I'm in charge of espionage for the FBI. Any espionage, FISC comes before him. What should he do, given his friend oversees them? Page replies, in this particular case, standards for recusal, though, are quite high. I just don't think this poses an actual conflict, and he doesn't know what you do. And then Strzok responds, yeah, generally does know what I do. Not to the level or the scope or area, but he's super thoughtful and rigorous about ethics and conflicts. I'm suggesting a social setting with others would probably be better than a one-on-one meeting. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to invite you to the cocktail party. You can sit next to me. I'm adding that part. Then Strzok continues, of course, you'll be there. Have to come up with some other work people cover for action. And Page writes, why more? 6 is perfectly fine for a dinner party. Oh, 6, intimate setting. They know each other. He's in his position, the judge in his position. There's a lot to unpack here. So what is clear is that Peter Strzok knew the judge and that both he and Page wanted to attend a party with him. That is a massive conflict of interest. Engineering a meeting with a FISA judge under false pretenses, in this case a cocktail party, that could actually be obstruction and have other criminal liability. We'll ask Greg Jarrett in a minute. What is really inexcusable is that the Department of Justice fought like hell, especially Rod Rosenstein, to keep this information secret. Now, Sarah Carter reporting that congressional investigators working for Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Mark Meadows, they discovered these text messages at the DOJ's headquarters, and this is part of the outrage. According to Sarah Carter, of the 1.2 million documents the DOJ Inspector General has acquired, the House Oversight Committee has only received just over 3,000, quote, unique documents. That means the DOJ never, ever wanted this stunning information to get out. They've been trying to hide it. Remember back in January, the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, begging in the final hours before they had to turn this information over, begging Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, allow the DOJ not to turn over the documents related to the Russia investigation to Devin Nunes and these congressional committees. It's now clear why Rod Rosenstein, yeah, that guy that appointed Mueller, now did this. It's all part of a year-long pattern of obstruction, of stonewalling, noncompliance in Congress's efforts, by the way, and constitutional duty to investigate and oversee the actions at the DOJ. You know, it's called checks and balances. Think about this for a second. If Rod Rosenstein had his way, we wouldn't know about any of these scandals. People now need to be held accountable. This is why people like, Grassley and Tillis and Cornyn and Graham are demanding, as we have been demanding for a year, a second special counsel to investigate the investigators. They can't investigate themselves. Now, as for that very important context, we learned that Strzok and Judge Contreras were friends, and that Judge Contreras oversaw the Flynn case, which, after he accepted the plea, it was a mystery. Why did he then recuse himself? Now, we still don't know the exact reason why, but this could have something to do with it. We also know that Peter Strzok was the FBI agent. He oversaw the January 2017 White House interview of Lieutenant General Flynn. And here's what we really need more information on. Strzok is the former FBI counterintelligence official who signed the paperwork to start the entire Russia investigation. And as these new text messages revealed, Judge Contreras was on the FISA court. And sources have been telling us that Judge Contreras may have signed off on one of the FISA applications to approve the warrant to spy on Carter Page, Trump associate, which means the Trump campaign, which likely gave the FBI access to Trump campaign communications. This is stunning. It is corrupt. It is an abuse of power, and it shows inexcusable biases and conflicts of interest that the Department of Justice has tried to conceal. Now, we need to know all the communications between Strzok, Page, and Contreras. As a matter of fact, release all the Strzok, Page text messages, everything you got. We need to find out if Strzok was involved in putting together the FISA application for Carter Page. He was a former high-ranking counterintelligence official who was bragging about it. Now, the FISA warrant for Page was signed in October 2016. Strzok was fired from Mueller's team in August of 2017. So it is time for Strzok to tell us, what did he know? When did he know it? How does this guy have a job? And don't forget, Lisa Page was advising Andrew McCabe. Now, we did also reach out to Judge Contreras for comment. He didn't get back to us. And also breaking right now, USA Today is reporting the Justice Department is considering publicly releasing parts of the FISA surveillance order against Carter Page. How about releasing all of it? Now, this would mean we would get to see exactly how that fake news dossier, the bulk of which was used to get the FISA warrant against Page, was used, and how the FBI misled on purpose, purposefully omitted information to FISA judges about Clinton that she bought and paid for that fake news, phony Russian dossier. And also tonight, a significant new development. Speaking of Christopher Steele, Fox News tonight reporting a British court is now ordering Steele to sit for a videotape deposition as part of an ongoing legal battle against BuzzFeed, the website that published the fake news dossier. Now, to call this huge is a massive understatement. Now, Steele will likely be forced to try and verify the dossier that he and Fusion GPS and the FBI never verified, never corroborated. So in other words, Steele will, under oath, have to admit whether or not he knew the dossier was full of lies from his phony Russian sources, but gave it to the FBI anyway. And according to a new book, Steele told friends that it was kind of 50-50 about the most salacious part of the dossier. That's the part that involved the hookers at the Ritz-Carlton urinating on a bed. And we also have learned more about Steele's use of current and former Russian government sources. We're going to be following this story very closely. All right, but also breaking right now, new details on the timeline for former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe to be fired and lose his pension. Now, we're learning that the deadline could now be Saturday. And as we have been explaining, the fact that McCabe is even in this position is stunning. It is inexcusable. He means he did something drastically, radically wrong. Our sources are telling us that McCabe could end up facing multiple criminal charges. Forget about the pension. And just a few months ago, McCabe was put on leave after current FBI Director Christopher Wray was reportedly informed that McCabe was going to be exposed in the upcoming Inspector General's report. I can't wait for that report. And also tonight, as we have predicted for months, the disgraced former FBI director, Jim Comey, he's prepared to cash in on his newfound fame. I did predict that. In just a few weeks, Comey's going to kick off his whirlwind book tour. He's got tough interviews with Stephen Colbert, Clinton sycophant George Stephanopoulos, and a cozy sit-down with the ladies of The View. And according to a new report from Axios, Comey's planning to, quote, come out hot and correct all the so-called lies about him and the FBI. For months, we have literally been bringing you, the American people, on a nightly basis, breaking news, hard-hitting investigative reports about the corruption at some of the highest levels of our government, including the shocking details about the abuse of power at the very top of the FBI. Now, James Comey, you want to come out hot? You want to answer hard, important questions? You're welcome on this program. Tonight, I am officially opening up an invitation to Jim Comey. You want to sell your book? Come on the show. We'll give you a full hour. You name a day, we'll make it work. We'll work with your schedule. I'll give you 3 hours on my nationally syndicated radio show, which, by the way, is on 575 radio stations around America, so everybody can hear from you. And we'll ask you the tough questions, the ones that Stephen Colbert might miss. For example, did you, in fact, tell a closed session of Congress that you believe Michael Flynn did not lie to the FBI? Did you think he's being unfairly prosecuted? Why did you draft a letter exonerating Hillary Clinton of charges in the email investigation months before she was interviewed by the FBI and 17 other important people? And will you explain the lies and the omissions to the FISA court? And why did you tell Trump that the dossier was unverified and salacious 3 months after you allowed the same dossier to be presented to the FISA court when you didn't tell the FISA court Hillary bought and paid for it, and you knew that? Why did you withhold the fact that Clinton paid for the dirty dossier? And how do you explain your unlawful leaking of classified information to the media after you were fired? You know, through that Columbia professor you wanted the special counsel? Jim Comey, if you're looking for fame and fortune, you want to sell books, by all means, have fun on The View. Have a great time. Yuck it up with Colbert. Hang out with George Stephanopoulos. Go get a beer afterwards. But if you really want to reach all Americans, defend your honor, if you really want to tell the truth, we've got a lot of questions for you. Come on this show. A full hour, 3 hours of radio. That's the best deal you're going to get. We'll lay out all the facts. We'll lay out all the evidence. We'll give you a chance to respond. And as we say here at Fox, well, we report. We'll let our audience decide if you're telling the truth. Here with reaction, Fox News contributors Sarah Carter, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. I'm looking at all of this. Let's first start. I think this is important as it relates to these text messages.
Right. Well, it's pretty clear that Peter Strzok was intending to manipulate a federal judge who's also a FISA judge and may have made one of the decisions to spy on Carter Page to the damage of the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency. And we know that Peter Strzok is the head of the counterintelligence at the FBI, so he had to have been involved in that FISA application. Mm-hmm. Did Contreras know? And if he did know, I would think he'd have to know, why didn't he recuse himself? And why didn't he recuse himself in the Flynn case? Because Peter Strzok, his pal, is a key witness in that case. That is such an important point, wouldn't you think, right? All right, Sarah, you did amazing work today. I think it came out at noon. I think your article on SarahACarter.com was up like 2 hours later. I don't know how you were able to pull it all together so fast. Let's get your take and your understanding based on your sources and conversations. Jim Jordan will join us in the next segment. But obviously, if it wasn't for Jordan and Meadows, we wouldn't have this information because Rod Rosenstein doesn't want us to have this information.
Oh, absolutely. I think that this shows diligence and hard work on the part of the House Oversight Committee and their investigators. They have been going back and forth to the DOJ. Now, the DOJ has kept a lot of these documents. There's these semi-redacted documents. And once again, I stress, it's over 1.2 million documents that Inspector General Michael Horowitz has been sifting through. And so anytime anybody from the committee wants to see a just a very less redacted version of the 3,162 pages that they got, They have to go over to the DOJ and then try to put the pieces together. This is incredible. This piece of information was not privy to national security, and it was also not something very personal. This was something that would have answered a question that a lot of people have been asking for some time now. Why did Judge Contreras recuse himself? Why was he recused? You know, we have to have these questions answered because in December 1st, 2017, General Flynn sat before him and pled guilty. And then 7 days later, he has to recuse himself. So something happened. And one more point, Sean, on Strzok. Remember, in 2016 is when they shared these text messages. Strzok is head of a major division, counterintelligence division of the FBI, and he's focused on Russia. So we know that he was dealing with a lot more cases, not just this case in specific. And he admits with Page himself that meeting with Judge Contreras could put Judge Contreras in a precarious situation where he'd have to recuse himself.
But they're going to do it anyway.
But they're going to do it anyways. What does that tell you about them?
It tells you that the stench in Washington is just overwhelming. Everybody's in bed with everybody else. They don't recuse themselves amid glaring conflicts of interest, and this is a perfect example. You know, when I used to appear in front of judges, occasionally they would recuse themselves, but they would explain the recusal on the record to be honest and forthright. Contreras didn't do that. He kept it a secret, and that invites the question, if you have nothing to hide, why are you hiding? It's also curious he didn't recuse himself until a week after Flynn pled guilty. My question is, did Flynn know that the FBI agents who interviewed him went back to Comey and Yates and said he's innocent? He told the truth.
And Comey said it.
Yes.
So what does that mean for Michael Flynn?
Well, I would predict that Judge Sullivan, who's the new judge, may get to the bottom of this. He has demanded that Mueller turn over all exculpatory evidence, and those interviews would be exculpatory. And if it is true that Flynn and his lawyer didn't fully know that they'd actually been exonerated by these agents, then his guilty plea ought to be set aside.
According to my sources, Sean, he did not know. He did not know about this bit of information. So that's going to be very interesting. And what Greg said is very important because remember, Flynn was cornered. And even after Strzok and the other agent interviewed Flynn, according to the sources, according to James Comey himself, they believed that he did not lie. So special counsel Robert Mueller did find a way to get him to plead guilty to one count of lying to the FBI. I think there's a lot more questions here than answers, and I think we're on the road to finding out what those are.
Mueller squeezed him, and he ruined his life.
By the way, the guy has to sell his house now.
He has to sell his house.
And I bet you they threatened his kid.
They did. My sources tell me they did threaten his son. And so, you know, this is overzealous prosecutors and the powerful government that can ruin you financially and destroy your life. It's no wonder that Michael Flynn finally threw in the towel.
What about Christopher Steele? I mean, this is the guy behind the Trump hoax. You know, he went to Russia and Russian government sources.
Yeah.
Clinton paid for it all. And we're told, reported this week, he didn't even believe his own salacious report.
Right. I read the interrogatory answers in the British court case. And he makes it clear that all of his information is completely unverifiable, that would be denied by his sources. Sure, they were, because the sources didn't exist. And if you read very closely and carefully, wow, Steele is really admitting that his entire story was a fairy tale.
Sarah, I cannot believe what I just heard.
It's very disturbing. And look, the lawsuit against Christopher Steele is very important because Christopher Steele slandered a lot of people in that dossier. And then it was solidified here in the United States after it was briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Trump and then leaked by BuzzFeed and posted on BuzzFeed. And he attempted to leak that to a number of other news agencies beforehand. People have a right to regain their name back.
All right, you guys have been amazing.
And get the truth out.
All right, more in the special edition of Hannity. Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Ron DeSantis, Tom Fitton, as we continue.